Hello. Well, thank you for joining us again to the Bill and Dave, or Dave and Bill, whichever podcast you want to call it. We're here to give you some updates on the General Assembly and especially on House Bill 1314. We want to thank each of you for reaching out and talking to friends, neighbors, other law enforcement groups, because it has been making a world of difference. I actually got a call from the chief of police lobbyist wanting to know what they can do to help in this situation. And this is an all hands on deck approach because this is very detrimental to law enforcement and something that we have never seen before.
Yeah, in fact, Bill, it'd be a complete departure from what we know in terms of liability for the police. It completely changes the landscape. It's nothing like 42 USC 1983, what we know would be a civil rights violation under federal law. It completely upends that. It creates a state level action where folks can sue, and not even for what police understand to be a violation. So in this instance, the bill changes the scheme for civil rights violation. Under current federal law, a police officer could be sued for a civil rights violation, and the defense would be that they acted in good faith, that it was clearly established law, that they were acting within the scope of civil rights. In Virginia, that is completely stripped. So the idea of qualified immunity would not exist. A lawsuit could be filed in state court, and the allegation doesn't have to be that they acted outside of clearly established law. In fact, we'll talk about some factors in here that the juries must consider, which would otherwise be benign, lawful activity that the police take, but could be used as aggravating factor. And then the other part of this bill that's so awfully concerning is that it creates significant burden for financial penalties, where a jury can both award compensatory damages and punitive damages, and attorney's fees.
And there's no limit, right?
Well, there is a limit for punitive
Just
damage
for
in Virginia.
Virginia.
Yeah, $350,000.
Right.
So that could be compensatory damages, punitive damages, and attorney's fees on top of all of that.
Do we know of any other state that has this kind of approach to any type of qualified immunity, gutting it without even lifting a pen to take any money away? It's essentially defunding police without using any money.
Exactly. And to your question, there are other states that have eliminated qualified immunity, but there is no law that I can find that has a similar structure where it allows someone to move forward with a claim for violation of civil rights on the state level, where they would be awarded not only compensatory damage, but punitive damages and attorney's fees. Um, the way this thing is set up is exactly what you just alluded to, and that is it is designed to defund the police. It's designed to impose financial ruin for an officer that might be on the receiving end of this, and for police departments too.
Yeah, that's what I find striking about the bill is it subtly got introduced under the cover of darkness, and we were scrolling through, and you come across this bill, and one of our board members had sent it to us saying, you need to look at this a little bit closer. And when we started looking at it yesterday a little bit closer, we realized this bill is really terrible. This is going further than we've ever seen them go before in an effort to defund us without even uh, saying the words of defunding, taking money away and not appropriating money. And so the Virginia State Police Association, of course, we're there to watch over these bills that come through, and by picking up on it with our board members looking at bills and you and I looking at bills, we find these type things that come up that may on some occasions get through without even anybody really paying attention.
Yeah, I think this one had kind of been under the radar just a bit. until we took some action on it. And the other thing, to your point, Bill, is that this proposal is designed to make it really easy to sue police in Virginia. So, under the federal scheme for civil rights violations, there are certain procedural hurdles that you have to make in order to be able to proceed with the lawsuit. And if this is to become law in Virginia, it's going to be very easy to sue the police and very easy to recover because the nature of the damages and punitive award and attorney's fees are there. So, a couple of things that I alluded to when we started, Bill, that I wanted to discuss are some of the factors that juries must consider. According to this proposal, it states some certain factors that juries must consider when they're making a determination with respect to a finding as far as the award. And those factors include wearing a facial covering, failure to verbally identify as law enforcement, alleged body camera policy violations, use of crowd control equipment, vehicle markings, and alleged non-compliance with court orders.
When I saw that, just to interrupt you for just a second, when I saw that, the very first thing that came to my mind is that this was introduced on behalf of some activist group like Antifa or anti-ICE organizations, because these are the things that you hear repeatedly by the crowds that are out there pushing out and against ICE agents from arresting criminal illegal aliens. And when you read this and you see these new factors that are put in there with face coverings, with unmarked vehicles, crowd control measures, all those things just is going to encourage these organizations that have been disrupting public life to be emboldened and empowered if the bill passes.
Mm-hmm. And while these things might signify something that might be a popular point to go after law enforcement, like you referenced ICE, they may be a popular point, but it is important to understand that the bill is drafted that any individual acting under color of law is liable under this bill. And it's not just those folks. It also includes supervisors. And in fact, this should probably be the most worrisome part for police supervisors. And that is that liability could go to the supervisor. And they don't even have to know. They don't have to participate, or there doesn't have to be deliberate indifference on the part of the supervisor in order for them to also be liable. All they have to do is have been supervising that person. That person violates somebody's rights, and now they become liable under the proposal.
And they don't have to be sergeants. They don't have to be first sergeants. They could be a team leader on a tactical team. They could be a joint task force leader. They don't have to be in a supervisory role. They just have to be supervising individuals that may have acted recklessly or what they consider recklessly, mm-hmm. and something happened.
That's right.
So it is really far beyond what I've ever seen, and it's really a dangerous thing right now.
And the bill states directly, supervisors who are responsible for directing or overseeing.
Right. That's what brought to mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Triggered the fact that, well, this doesn't just really mean sergeants or first sergeants or ASACs. This could mean the trooper who basically is controlling the scene, the tactical team, the team leader that you have there, or a tactical field force leader. I mean, there's all kinds of problems that could exist within that language.
Mm-hmm. And where we might see real significant problems with respect to how police would carry out their job if this becomes law in Virginia would be in instances like crowd control, situations that require rapid response, tactical team operations.
Right.
Where they're going to have some measure of hesitation. And it also could affect law enforcement more broadly, just in terms of enforcement in general. And really, who's going to lose in this situation is going to be the communities, because if the police are not, if they don't feel capable of being proactive and enforcing the law without the threat, this looming threat of serious financial ruin, then they're not going to do their job the way that they normally would have.
Well, it's a socialist, communist type approach. No, uh, no law enforcement, yet liability falls upon those who actually are out there trying to do the job that we as the public have asked them to do.
Right.
And it's really disheartening to know that there's legislators out there that would introduce things like this, knowing the damage that it could do to law enforcement. And it's a prime example of why we as an association have never endorsed candidates, why we don't, and we have never and we haven't endorsed any candidates. And I know we get some people who say, well, you've endorsed this governor or that governor. We've never done that. And we haven't, and we will never do it because, you can never control what the delegate, the senator, or the governor is going to introduce. I've said it many times and I'll say it again. It is easy to campaign and say, I'll do X, Y, and Z, but it is really hard to govern because when you get there, you realize the ramifications of what you're trying to do.
Certainly, Bill. And one of the things that has also been said, in response to this is, well, the police can just get a professional liability insurance policy that will cover them. The unfortunate part about that is that there's most typically, an exclusion for civil rights violations in a police professional liability insurance policy. The protection wouldn't be there, not for the Commonwealth, not for the localities throughout Virginia, and certainly not for the police themselves or the people who are supervising those police. All of those folks would be in serious peril of financial ruin if this thing is to become law in Virginia.
Well, I don't know that they could afford a policy on the salaries because the policies will be so great because it'll be so easy to bring a suit to the individual who is acting in the capacity in which they're trained and sworn to do. I just find it to be a very uh, dangerous piece of legislation for the Commonwealth of Virginia as a whole, because and it's why we've been the first one to speak out about this issue. It's why other agencies now are calling us because they see the dangers in this. Um, we're probably the only organization right now that's sounding the alarm. We hope other organizations will join in, but it's a piece of legislation that I feel that in the future, if it passes, you're going to basically have very few people interested in going into law enforcement. You're not definitely going to retain the guys that are out there today.
Absolutely.
So your retention problem is exacerbated by it, and your recruitment problem just went through the roof. So it goes back to what I said about socialism. It's a mindset that you can take social workers and be able to uh, um, police people by talking them through things, and this just does not work
Mm-hmm.
because the criminal intent and the criminal mindset of those individuals.
I'll point out something else, Bill. House Bill 1314 isn't about accountability. It's about defunding the police.
It is.
And I will point out something else that's very important in terms of the overall conversation here, and that is that collective bargaining would be no consolation in this instance because all of the provisions in the collective bargaining proposals that are before the General Assembly right now, each of them say that no agreement can override state law. The focus of this is to implement this as state law, which would mean that that would be the law of the land, and the police would be subject to a potential civil liability, like we've talked about, excessive potential civil liability, and no agreement's going to override that.
Well, my biggest fear about collective bargaining, and the reason that we've opposed it and still oppose it, is it's the camel's nose under the tent. It's the first step into getting to these type of requirements and defunding. There's a lot of promises that come uh, to the people who they're trying to convince that collective bargaining is the way to go, and will bring more money into your pockets and so forth like that. But the same people who are pushing that are the same people that are pushing this. So where do you think their loyalty is? It's not within law enforcement; it's within this. And I reiterate, that's why we didn't endorse a candidate. That's
Right.
why we as an organization we have always remained neutral, because we eventually have to fight against these things. And if you're endorsing a candidate, you're apprehensive of stepping up and saying anything negative.
Mm-hmm. And that may very well be the reason why we're the only strong voice in terms of.
Well, I think that's why we remain neutral,
Absolutely.
because we want to be the voice of the troopers and the men and women of this agency that are members of our organization.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll bring you some more information very soon. We've got some other bills that we're going to talk about. This was front and center right now. It's a really bad bill, and I urge you, all of you that might be listening, to reach out to Delegate Maldonado, to her office, to the delegates and senators in your district, or all of the delegates and senators if you've got time to do so, and let them know that this bill is House Bill 1314 is bad for public policy. It's bad for the police. It will financially ruin people, including the officers and the supervisors, the law enforcement officers in Virginia. And we need to continue to keep up the fight.
Thank you.